Okay, let's bring in Claude. Claude, how you doing?
Good, gentlemen. Yourselves.
Doing
Thank
great.
you. Very well.
Uh, before we get into the meat of the week, I think to come touch back on Trump because he's been the subject of a lot of
Mm,
comments today, right?
mm,
I think his biggest legacy will be to have exposed to both spectrums, to both sides of his country, that the president has no clothes.
mm.
With the deep state going to war and staging a 4-year coup and attack on their own leader,
Yeah.
they've basically destroyed American soft power forever.
Mm,
That will have lasting consequences for a long, long time, maybe
mm,
forever.
mm,
And you see it. You see it in every sphere of American, international politics. Nobody cares. Nobody listens to them.
mm.
They couldn't even put on a virtual summit this week. I don't know if you guys noticed how they cut off Macron twice and he just left. I mean, you can't even when you get to that point where you're so incompetent that you can't even organize
Mm.
and schedule your world leaders how they're going to appear in what order and so forth. It was fascinating to watch. But at least now this week, after listening to Putin, um, we understand what this was all about, and he very elegantly put it so that the people he wanted to understand what he was saying did without creating panic or anything like that. But his message were very, very specific, like a scalpel, as far as I thought. But when you factor the Belarus situation, the pushing Zelensky to the contact line, what's been going on in Syria, everything together, I can understand now why Russia felt they were actually under attack, because they
Mm.
were.
Mm.
This is not Cold War. This is a warm war. When you're
Mm.
trying to destabilize a
Mm.
country, um, in from multiple angles at the same
Mm.
time.
Mm.
It's I could see this was not a bluff, and I can also see the reaction by the Biden administration, why there was such panic there, because once they realized they were caught,
Mm.
they realized that Russia was serious. They were moving these people and expecting
Mm.
Zelensky to try to push through the contact line or do something stupid. Um, and so here we are, where a few days later, for the first time in the Syrian conflict, which has been
Mm.
going on, the Russians are there for now for what, 7 years, 6, 7 years.
Mm.
They've actually flew behind the American country, control zone, and destroyed the CIA's terrorist camp in one shot. And Putin touched on that during his speech when he talked about asymmetric um,
Mm.
actions and red lines that were going to be decided now by Russia and nobody else. So in other words, he was telling the American generals, that agreement we have in Syria, it's over.
Mm. Mm.
And that's how I read it anyways. That's how I
Mm.
read the
Mm.
week go through. But every week it's getting worse. At
Mm.
a, and at this point, I don't know. And then you have the Americans say, okay, we're going to stay out of the Black Sea, which
Mm.
there was a mention of blowing up bridges.
Mm.
So something in those Belarusian documents, there must have been discussions there about the bridge to Crimea.
Mm.
That's how I read it. I read it as a double
Yeah.
double talk. Um, and then just a day later, the Brits say, no, well, we're going to go. Like,
Mm.
every time something goes on and there's detente, the British come in and they try to spice things up.
Mm.
And it's very noticeable. And whether it's
Mm.
Navalny, whether it's the previous poisoning, I forget the name of the couple there, but the the
Skripal. Mm.
Skripal, the dossier, there's always something. And every time there's
Mm.
detente and there's
Mm.
rapprochement, boom, so this ain't accidental. This is on purpose. So at this point, you got to wonder, what is the British trying to do here?
Mm.
They can't even put their navy to sea. Their subs are moored in Scotland. They can't be sailed. They have one ship which they're
Mm.
flagging around, a brand new mini aircraft carrier, but that's about it. And so they have no capacity to do anything but to create conflict. And that's how I saw the week, gentlemen.
Well, indeed, can I just say a number of very perceptive points? First of all, you may be interested to know that Peskov, who is Putin's spokesman, he actually did an interview on Russian television in which he said that Russia and Belarus are going to have to live under pressure, learn to live under pressure for the foreseeable future, that they're going to be facing the same kind of intense pressure from the West, and that this is going to go on for the foreseeable future. That's quite a remarkable statement. It shows that the Russians don't really expect that all these discussions I was talking about at the beginning with the Americans, that they're really going to bear fruit. It's partly what Alex, the question point, a point Alex was making, a point some of the viewers were making, that, you know, that there are not going to be, the Americans may find it impossible to acknowledge the Russian red lines in the way that the Russians would feel is necessary and acceptable for there to be a real substantive easing of tensions. So we will see where that goes, but that was what Peskov said. On the question of what the British do, well, as somebody who is proudly British, I am absolutely furious about it. I think Britain sending its warships into the Black Sea is absolutely ludicrous. I think you're absolutely right that there was talk about the bridge, and it's interesting that at around that time, the Russians announced that they were closing the Kerch Strait and the Sea of Azov to warships and keeping them away from the bridge, and that this is going to go on until October. So I wonder what came out of all of that. And I think that this is a constant game of pressure and provocation, which has gone on for far too long, is going on far too far, and it is becoming increasingly dangerous and misconceived. I think there are some people in Washington who understand that and are trying to row back. I think they're coming under enormous pressure. I don't think there's a strong president who can back them. And I think the British, unfortunately, for reasons I have never really understood, always seem, I'm talking about obviously the British government, always seems to look for trouble in its relationship with Russia, when at a particular point in time, when Britain has left the European Union, it needs, on the contrary, to be making as many friends in as many places as it can. So I agree. I think you made some very perceptive and insightful points. I just wanted to add that particular gloss to them.
Thanks, Alexander. The next move for the CIA they will have to stage something. They want extra. They'll need extra resources in Syria. Yeah. So how they get them there? Because they can no longer train terrorists in Afghanistan.
Yes,
they can't train them in Iraq because they're under very watchful eye by the Iraqi government in Iraq, to the point where I think they've been asked politely to leave. So where do you train them? So they train them in Syria, knowing full well that they were exposed, but probably train them there because they had no choice.
Absolutely.
So now they either have to pull out of Syria, or they have to invent a reason to put more resources there. And we know they don't have a reverse gear. So what comes next? So it'll be interesting to see in the coming weeks or months as how this develops. But I suspect I only see escalation. I wish I did.
Yes.
Hope that the Biden administration was able to rein the CIA in, but Trump wasn't able to. Nobody was able to, and the party continues. And I just see it getting worse, unfortunately.
Yes.
Have a great weekend, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Hey, Alex, take care. Nice T-shirt.
Thank you. Take care. Nice avatar. All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Zahir, how you doing?
Hey guys, how you doing? Yeah, good. I want to talk about a few things, but first of all, the recent spat between Czech Republic and Russia. That is, I find it very odd. I mean, same people were involved in that in Czech Republic in 2014 happen to be the same people involved in the Skripal. What a coincidence. I mean, how? I don't get it.
Well, I mean, the Russian media has ridiculed the story, and I think it's worth pointing out that previously the Czechs had all said that it was all a mistake, an accident, that this thing was due to a negligence on the part of the companies that were storing these things, and the Bulgarian arms dealer who supposedly was involved in it. So this has been a sudden, very sharp change in the story. Now, the Russians, I don't know if this is true, by the way, and this may be completely wrong, but the Russians are claiming that the Czech affair has been worked up in order to distract attention away from the Belarus coup. That the coup in Belarus was the big story, and that the media and that that there was a sudden need to try and create some other crisis to talk about, so that you don't talk about what was happening in Belarus. And by the way, there are some people in Russia, I'm not saying this is true, by the way, who say that the really big crisis that was being planned for this spring and early summer was not in Ukraine, it was in Belarus. In other words, all those troops were being sent to Ukraine in order to create, to sort of focus Russian attention on Ukraine, whilst the reality, the real play, was in Belarus. I don't know whether that's true, and please don't assume that that is true.
Oh, no,
I know there are some
absolutely
people
not
in Russia who are talking about this,
but no,
and I haven't really got to the bottom of the Belarus
thing.
But on the Czech thing, can I just finish by saying this?
Sure.
I think the Czechs have got themselves into a very difficult situation, because had they expelled 4 Russian diplomats in response to this event, after all, it happened 7 years ago, the Russians would have expelled 4 Czech diplomats, and that would have been the end of the story. The Czechs were egged on into expelling 18 Russian diplomats. That is a grotesque overreaction. The Russians retaliated by expelling 20. The Czechs are now in an extremely difficult position because, from their point of view, their relationship with Russia is far more important to them than Russia. A relationship with the Czech Republic is for Russia, and that's a simple fact of power mechanics. So they tried to claw back and try to persuade the Russians to let those Czech diplomats go back, and they said that if they didn't, they would expelled even more Russians, 63 in fact, and that it's all going to happen right away. And then, of course, the Russians said no, and then the Czechs said, well, we will expel these 63 Russian diplomats, but only at the end of May, after we've had more discussions. So they have been gamed. That's the impression I get. They've been maneuvered into a position of a confrontation with Russia, which is absolutely not in their interests, and not something that most people in the Czech Republic want at all. And with the government itself very divided about this, over a incident that happened 6 years ago, and 7 years ago, and where a completely different account of what happened was originally given. And the claim that these two same individuals who were involved in or allegedly involved in the Skripal affair were behind it is just farcical. So it's a whole thing it was a ludicrous play, overplayed, and which has gone very badly wrong. And the Czechs are scrambling to find some way to resolve it. Very sad, actually.
No, I mean, it would be very stupid of Russians to do something like that, because let's not forget, Czech is a NATO country. For Russians to do something like that, it would be very reckless and stupidity for them.
I mean, I absolutely don't understand the motivation.
The same 2 guys?
Well, exactly.
Really?
Really? I
mean,
the
same 2 guys?
I know.
That's how stupid we all are?
Yeah.
All of us believe
absolutely.
that? Who in God's name is that freaking dumb to believe that the same 2 guys that supposedly were in Salisbury and supposedly unleashed this poison that if you get 1 foot close to it, you evaporate, and ducks were dying in a lake, according to what's her face, the CIA,
Haspel, Gina
right?
Haspel.
These two guys are the same guys that blew up a munitions depot in 2014. These two guys, they couldn't find two other freaking Russian agents so that they could pin this on. They just manufactured the same two guys, and people go along with it. Absolutely. It's just getting to the point of just absolutely dumb. Can we get new script writers?
Yes.
New script writers to come up with different narratives instead of, rehashing the same damn movie over and over again. At least get some different freaking writers to come up with some more creative plots than just rehashing the same damn people. The fact that people believe this stuff is beyond me. Anyway.
Those who believe it are probably neoliberals, I guess. But who knows? No, but
I don't think anybody. I don't think anybody seriously believes it. Actually, I mean that. I mean, it's a farcical affair, and as I said, it's backfired on the Czechs, and in a way that I feel sorry for them. Actually,
no, I mean, let's not forget there's some Czechs and Slovaks. They have a grievance against Russia. I believe for 1968. Remember when Russians rolled their tanks in 68?
Yeah.
But this is not the way to deal with it, you know. And one more thing. Second thing I want to talk about is Putin. Man, this guy got to be the toughest leader I've seen in last, I don't know how long, but everything has been thrown at him since 2014. He's still standing. Because I remember in 2014 in G20 summit in Australia, you saw how they treated him. Yet he left early G20. Yet absolutely. he still come back stronger. Year after year, he still came back stronger. And yet those leaders who treated him poorly are all gone.
Absolutely.
Gotta tell you, Putin is a very calm, doesn't react badly. He just reacts very carefully. He has the thing in him that he can take punches, but yet when he punch you, he'll punch you hard. That's the type of guy he is.
Well, in this, I have to say, he reflects very much the mood in Russia at the moment. I mean, he is it's precisely because he responds in such a measured way that he is as strong in Russia as he is. If he acted impulsively or emotionally, he would not have the authority in his own country, because that's the kind of foreign policy at the moment that they want.
Well, he's a KGB. He was a KGB, so I think he's an intelligence officer. So I think he's trained to be calm and all that. And no wonder some Republicans in America admire him. Even in Europe, some conservatives admire Putin.
Oh, indeed, a lot of people do. What I would say is, though, that over the last year, there's been a notable hardening in Russian language and policy. I mean, this business of we're referring to the Western states as our partners, which had already begun to grate on many people in Russia, that seems to have been completely dropped. I haven't heard even Putin use that expression for some time now. And if you listen to or read the sort of things that people like Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, is saying, they become the language has become much harder. The reactions have become much stronger. And I mean, the way they treated Josep Borrell, the EU high representative for foreign policy, who went to Moscow. I mean, they were not taking any lectures. I mean, he left with his tail between his legs. So the Russians are now becoming more assertive than they used to be. This is something, by the way, which has surprised the West, and they're not quite sure how to respond to it.
No, you see, I'll tell you why. Because in 2003, this is from Nicholas Kristof of New York Times. He said that he expected Putin to be the sober Boris Yeltsin. And he said he's disappointed. He's not.
Well, there we go.
I mean, I gotta tell you, I'm baffled that Navalny even have supporters. his supporters, do they even, because to me, I see Navalny the second coming of Boris Yeltsin. I don't want this guy anywhere near Kremlin. I don't want him near office or anything. Because but my question to his supporters, do they forget, do they even remember anything from their like did their parents, his young supporters, did their parents told them anything what they went through in the 90s, how they were humiliated by the
Well,
West every day?
Well, the short answer is he doesn't have many supporters. I mean, I did a program about the protests that took place the other day on my own channel, and I mean the turnout was derisory. That was the word I used, and it was. I mean, there's been some attempts to talk up the numbers of the protests in Moscow, but even the Western media accepted that the protest in Moscow was very small. And across the rest of the country, it was just non-existent, essentially. It was just a couple of hundred people there, a few dozen people here, one or two people there. It was nothing. So, I mean, obviously, somebody who gets that much attention is going to attract some degree of support, because people like that always do. I mean, people who are angry or disappointed or frustrated about something, or people who have particular ideological ideas, which, you know, everybody has. So it's not surprising that he has some support. But given the amount of attention he's been getting, given the enormous, you know, weight of the information campaign behind him, it is very, very telling, actually, how little support he actually has. And my impression is it's been declining for a long time. I think I don't have an answer for what happened last year. I don't know. I mean, there's all sorts of theories floating around. I'm not going to get into what they are. All I will say is, whatever the reason, whatever actually happened, the reason it happened was because that already very minimal support he had has declined even further, and that made him vulnerable.
I want to talk about now about Belarus and Ukraine. First of all, Belarus, what happened this week with the attempt on, they say, on Lukashenko. They're saying that the opposition leader, the lady you just see in exile, Tikhanovskaya. I'm just guessing it. Okay, do you think she had anything to do with this?
No, I don't think so. I don't think she's capable of being involved in something like this. I think what this has exposed, actually, is that she's not really the opposition to Lukashenko, that she's somebody who's been used and has been used as a sort of image, but that there are other far more sinister people pulling the strings behind the appearance of things. The Belarus affair is still, there's an awful lot that is still unexplained, but there's a number of points to make. Firstly, Putin has publicly backed it. He's now talked about it as if it was fact, and he's spoken to Biden about it. He talked about it in that telephone conversation. So the Russians are throwing the weight of their credibility behind this, and that it counts for a lot. Secondly, the Russians have been producing lots of transcripts and copies of Zoom calls involving various people, and that rather suggests that there is again something behind the story. Bear in mind, when the West makes allegations, they never give us anything because they say it's classified. So that we have to accept it on trust. This time, the Russians have published a lot of evidence. I haven't had time to assess it or go through it, but it seems that there is substance to it. And last but not least, and most remarkable of all, in the face of all of this, there has been absolute radio silence about it from the West, which suggests to me that the West is deeply embarrassed by what has happened. I can't come up with any other explanation for that. I would have thought that if the story was ridiculous, we would have had Jen Psaki and the United States coming up and saying so. The fact that we've had nothing at all, that the media has completely not covered this story, suggests to me that they are very embarrassed about it, and that may mean that it's true. We're going to have a trial in Minsk, and no doubt we will find out a lot more then.
Yeah, but the thing is, like who, like that was a very dangerous thing. Whoever behind this, probably from the U.S. or Baltics nation, very reckless. And
Oh,
now Lukashenko, like he was pitting Russia against the West. Now he has second thoughts now, I guess.
well, absolutely. I mean, he's with Putin. I mean, there was, you can see the pictures on the Putin's website. I mean, now they're the best of friends, and it's remarkable actually to see how Lukashenko is now talking all the time. You know, following in Putin's footsteps. He's agreeing with everything that Putin says practically. I mean, from where Lukashenko, the West was trying to persuade Lukashenko to distance himself from Russia. They've now pushed him into Russia's arms, just as they pushed Russia into China's arms. It seems an odd policy or set of policies to follow, but there we are.
Yeah, and now Ukraine, that Russia has pulled its troops back and all that.
Yeah.
So what's next for Zelensky? What's he's gonna do? And if I'm China and I'm looking at the Ukraine and Belarus situation, and then thinking of same as Taiwan, what would they be thinking?
Right. Well, let's talk about what Zelensky is going to do. I predict, this is my guess, that there's going to be another ceasefire announcement before very long, and that we will certainly see a degree of stabilization. And then, of course, Zelensky will have to deal with the many political problems that he faces in Ukraine itself, which he has probably made much worse as a result of this particular episode. Now, what's going to happen to him, I'm not going to say, but, you know, that seems to me where we're heading now. At the moment, it seems to me this crisis is going into abeyance. I don't say it's over, I don't say it's resolved, but into a certain degree of abeyance. Now, China is looking at what happens in Ukraine. If there is a war in Ukraine and Ukraine is defeated and the Russians win, then the Chinese will say, well, the United States was unable to stop the Russians in Ukraine, so that shows that it won't be able to stop us if we start doing things in Taiwan. They already think they can. And already we see these very strong articles appearing in Global Times in which they're saying that if the United States gives a guarantee, a security guarantee to Taiwan, Taiwan will then be encouraged to seek independence. And at that point, China will go to war. And what the United States, that United States guarantee will either be exposed as a bluff, or the United States will be at war with China. If it is a bluff, by the way, then it's a stupid idea, because if, as I said in a program that I did, if the first law of war is you don't march on Moscow, the first law of diplomacy is you don't bluff Beijing. Beijing will always call whatever bluff you're making. And that will be that is a lesson that the Blinkens need to learn.
Oh, and two more things I want to talk about. What Britain's gonna send its warships to Black Sea?
Well,
what would Russia should do? Would Russia do anything? Will they confront Britain?
It reminds me of a story about what Bismarck said at one point when the British were going to send their army to Germany to stop German reunification. And Bismarck was asked what he would do, and he said, I'll send the police to arrest them. I'm sorry to put it in that rather crude way. The idea that the Royal Navy, the British Royal Navy, once the mightiest fleet in the world, can achieve things in the Black Sea where the US is afraid to go is just fantasy. And I know that some people in Britain thought that comments I'd made about this were too strong, but I mean, that's how I feel.
And also, like, I want to talk about Russia. They got some good diplomats. I mean, Lavrov, arguably the best foreign minister, but the guy in China, he's a pretty good diplomat too, though.
Absolutely,
I like how he handled Blinken in his own territory in Anchorage.
Absolutely.
No one does that.
I mean, the Chinese have superb diplomats, and at the same time, they're also becoming extremely assertive. I mean, this talk about wolf warriors is not entirely without foundation. I mean, some of the things that Chinese diplomats have been saying on Twitter have been absolutely astonishing. And I mean, they are intentionally trolling the Americans at the moment. Now, whether that's a clever thing to do or a wise thing to do is another matter. But they are very, very tough and determined diplomats, and they know what they're doing, definitely.
Well, no, because Chinese have sensed that there's no diplomacy in Washington because Washington is in shambles right now. So
Absolutely.
That's why I guess they're like sensing that, you know what, right now this is their opportunity.
Yes, but this is of course the key point, because where the Russians see a vacuum in Washington and they sense a danger, the Chinese, from a much stronger position, see a vacuum in Washington and sense an opportunity, exactly as you said. And that might actually heighten the danger.
Oh, alrighty. Anyways, and now that's all I want to talk to you guys about, and hopefully talk to you guys next week.
Thank you very much, Zahir.
Yeah.
Take care, Zahir.
Alrighty.